Hey guys, what's going on? This is Nerf Herder here. I'm working on a commission of mine, and I decided I was going to go ahead and film a real quick tutorial on how to wire up your Hilt side Neopixel connector. Now there are plenty of Hilt side Neopixel connectors you can get. They all do the same thing. I've mentioned it in my blade plug video. The stock Neopixel lit PCB connectors, you can use those. Personally, I haven't done them yet, and I don't ever offer to do anything for somebody if I haven't done it a few times on my personal things, on my personal hilts. I do not practice on anybody's stuff, so I stick with things that I've done before. I will go ahead and do. There are plenty of PCBs, hilt side connectors that you can get, whether it's Smuggler's Outpost, Albert Flores, hit him up. He's got on the Etsy store. I'll leave a link. There's PCBs there, which I have a set right here. The more of an X pattern. More of an X pattern to it. You get your holder. In the same place. This one is one that I damaged. The push pins got a couple of them got pinched, and that's my fault. And so this has always been one that I have that's extra. One day I may try to solder sucker these pins out and order some new pins and use it. But I wanted to show this as an example because you will have a completely different wiring setup for your pins and your negative, positive, and data line. So when you order it, you will see the layout on that, which ones are which, and you wire them up accordingly. So I just want to show this example off. There's more than one pogo pin system to get. There's long pins, there's short pins. Just do your research and see what you need, see what will work for you. But what I'm going to be using and doing an example of today is the Custom Saber Shop's Neopixel connector pins. This is the 11 pin system. You can do 7 pins. I do 7 pins. 7 to 11, it doesn't matter really. I mean, there's more heat distribution and more voltage sharing the load with a few extra pins, the 4 extra pins. But that's entirely up to you. Some people may get confused on that, whether they should go with 7 or 11. Really, it's just what you prefer. But you also have up here, your negative. You got 2 pads for your negative, your data line in the middle, and then your 2 for the positive. I love to use the Custom Saber Shop's Neopixel connectors. This is what I learned off of for the most part, well, other than the DIN pin system that was out when Neopixel was pretty much the very first way to go, which is a little bit different. Those still can work. Really all we're doing is we're creating a system to where the blade side pin, connector connects to this, and then these all send a current through the positives, negatives, and data, so everything matches up. It's pretty straightforward when you really look at it. So this is a pre-soldered one. Normally I do them to save a couple bucks, but he purchased the one that was already pre-soldered, so these are pins are already in. But so I don't have a video to really show you how I do that. I don't have any with me right now. But essentially what I do is I take the pins, I drop them all in, get a little bit of flux on top of each one, solder on top of it, and get those beautiful circle marks, and make sure your push pins are good. Still push. You want every one of them to be springy, every one of them to bounce. Okay, so this is the KRS flagship hilt, which is just an amazing hilt to use as a base. This is what I use to build my Orgus DIN style lightsaber. I customize that. Usually you can customize the leather wrapping, you get your shrouds etched. You can pretty much do a lot. This is a great base at a great price. Really cool hilt. So what I do, I like to start with when I'm installing a lightsaber, what I like to do is, first of all the pieces, I map out, figure out what I'm going to do, get a game plan, how you're going to do this, all that. But when all is said and done and I've decided on my plan of attack and how I'm going to do it, I always go Neopixel connector, switches, the battery, whether it's a recharge port, speaker, and soundboard. I work my way down the hilt. That's just the way I do it. Some people will do the soundboard out. I mean, that's, you know, any way you want to roll, homeboy, that's up to you. This is how I do it. And since I'm going to start here, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to wire up the hilt side PCB pogo pin system. Okay, so got all this set up. I have taken some of my flux. It's beautiful stuff here. I've taken the flux. I have dabbed it just a little bit, right? Got each pad has been a little dab of flux on each one of these pads here. So you got 2 positives, a data, 2 negative lines. And I have put a little bit of flux on each of these pads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pads. So what I do is I want to go ahead and measure out the length of how long my wires are going to need to be for the hilt side to go to the board. So I'm going to take this off. Grease those threads, man, that was beautiful. So take off the body, and here is the chassis, which is the Goth Eco chassis. Goth Eco chassis from, I believe, KR Sabers prints this. I believe this is from the KR website, the saberarmory.com. So I take this, and this is going to be held in with a switch section, which I love to get these for KR flagships, or really anything that has only like a 1-button hole. See, this is the 1 button, but they have the tactile switch over here, which is really cool. Older models I don't think really had that. At least the ones I had never did. But if you don't want to go that route, Rob from Ciroc Sabers, a friend of mine, and a smuggler from Smuggler's Outpost, he makes these dual tactile switches that'll fit in a 12mm hole. So he machines that. You got 2 micro tacks and a 3D printed piece that holds it in. I can do a video on that later as well, show you guys how I do it. But this works really well, it's really cool. So that switch will be in here, and the chassis will be locked by the switch being held in place. So that works out really well. But now what we want to do is we want to make sure we got, here's our 3D printed PCB holder for the hilt side connector. You got 2 little retention screws on it. This is a 1-inch. On the 7/8 inch, it'll have a threaded end piece. But on this one, you got 2 retention screws that screw in and hold the PCB actually down into place. So we're going to take this guy. You can kind of set it in and see. This thing is going to sit right about here. Right about down in there. This guy is going to sit at about right here. And it goes all the way down in there and drops in. It dropped in very nicely, but it fits right in here. And it comes to a stop. So it's right there. So from there, I go, okay, how long do I have? So from here, the board's going to sit to about right here. PCB and the holder is going to be right here, and the board's going to sit right here. So I've already cut my wires to length, and you want to make sure that you cut and give yourself a little bit of slack. You don't want to cut directly to length, because if you go ahead and get it all wired up, get everything in, and find that you're just a little too short of wire, that's gonna really suck, man. I promise you. So I always cut and give a little bit, because also these are going to be twisted together, kind of braided together, and that could, you know, pull a little bit over whatever space in here. You could lose just a little bit at a time. The more you lose, the more it kind of sucks. So I got right here, and this is way longer than I need, honestly, but that's going to go all the way down to almost the speaker. So really, I could cut a little off if I want to, but I've already cut these. These are good length for me, and you can always trim once you've already made it out to the other side. Then we can trim them all in one go. But these wires also usually go to different places, so you kind of want to play that by ear. Measure it out, see what you need. So now that we know the length, we go ahead and put this guy off to the side. I got this dude here. it is time to solder this dude up. Alright, gonna take, I usually like to start with the data line and work my way out. And you can, I don't know if I mentioned this at the beginning of this, you can do one 22 gauge wire for positive and one 22 gauge wire for the negative. You're gonna have to split that negative off for a Neopixel build anyways. You're gonna have two wires going to two different negative pads on the CFX. So I usually just do double of the 24, and you know, you're not really, it's not cram foo really for two 24 gauge wires. Anyways, it's not a ridiculously tight space on the inside, so I like to use it. And then with the positive ones, I just splice them down, and then you're going to splice the positives to your positive pad with your battery wire anyways, so it doesn't really do me any harm to do two positives and two negatives. Again, this is, a lot of times you'll find that it's usually just personal preference, man. There's more than one way to skin a cat in this hobby. This is just how I like to do it. So I'm going to take my pliers. Actually, let's come out just a little bit. I'm going to take my pliers and I'm going to pinch just enough to where I can get a good lead going on there. Stripped that. So now this is a lead. The lead is exposed wire that we're going to be soldering to a pad. Now the rule of thumb is you want to cut your lead to be the same size as the pad that you're soldering to. Unless the soldering pads are really big, like the Golden Harvest V3 has really big soldering pads on the board, so you can kind of go crazy on that, but I still like to have short leads. Short leads solder better, it's easier, you can be quicker. With a long lead, you can lay it down and solder it, and then when you lift the solder up, it can pull some of the wire up, and then you can have this peaking type thing. But when you have a short lead, you basically eliminate a lot of excess wire that you don't need soldered up. So I just want to do a little bit, and now what we're going to do is we're going to dip it in flux. So I'm going to dip my wire into some flux. Boop. And I'm going to go ahead and get some of this off. I don't mind when I get some on my finger, because then I put some on the solder piece itself, so everything pretty much flows very nicely. Alright, so now what I said in my blade plug video when I was soldering, pre-tin the soldering iron, and then I like to solder with my wires pointing down, so that way I can get in there and kind of go down. So it's real quick. It's about all you need to do. Now when you look at it, you will see now that we have soldered that lead. That's what we want. Alright, now what I'm going to do, and I usually do this at the beginning, but I wanted to show you guys that real quick, and doing tutorials makes me kind of do things out of order sometimes. I'm going to pre-tin each pad down the line. So you get some solder on your soldering iron. Solder on your soldering iron. And this is definitely going to be weird because I'm filming, trying to get a tight shot for you. Normally I'm not trying to make this look good on camera, I'm just rolling with it. But here we go. I'm going to touch soldering iron to the pad, and I'm going to add a little bit. A little bit of solder to it. And I'm just going to run down a list here. Don't want too much on there, just a little bit. Some solder on there. Touch the heat to the pad, and then let it just flow on there. There we go. Again, you don't want a lot, just enough to pre-tin it. Make sure nothing is bridged. We don't have any bridged joints. You want to be able to get some PCB cleaner and clean off that flux, but everything is shiny. Everything's shiny. That's what you want. You want it to look like that. It's actually a lot harder to do this on camera because I'm trying to get the camera angle just right. Usually I just let it just flow with it. But there you go, that's what you want it to look like. And now we're going to solder our wires to these pads. Okay, so I've taken all my wires and I've soldered all, I've stripped and soldered and made all my leads on these wires. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the data line. That's just how I like to do it. Now remember what I said, where the wire should be the same length as the pad. Going up to this, I've got a little excess of wire, so I'm going to go ahead and just give it a little tiny strip. Maybe even a little bit more, not too much. That's good, that's going to cover it just right. Now another thing you want to keep in mind whenever you're wiring this up is how it's going to go into here. So this is going to come up underneath it, and your wires are going to come out through here. Now what I like to do is, you don't want to hook it up here with wires facing that way, because then you're going to have to bend it in and up, and that's going to put a lot of stress on the joint. The best way to do it is from the inside, for the wires to be pointing in and up. So I want them to all come off of the pad from, if this was the top, this is the top, positive data and all that. I want the wires to come down this way. I want them to come down towards the pins. That's how I like to do it. It creates a lot less stress on the wires and creates a more smooth flow for the wires to bend up into the hilt. So we're going to pre-tin a soldering iron. Everything's pre-tinned, and now we're just going to do this real quick. We're just going to have our wire. Again, this is kind of ghetto, you guys. I hold things ghetto-like, and then I'm just going to touch until it starts to move. Connect, and boom. Success. So now I got my data line. Let's go ahead and take care of the negatives. Same thing with the negatives. I have cut them to the proper length. And we're just going to go to the next one. Sometimes I bend them down a little bit like that so I can get a little bit more of a good leverage system. Once that solder starts to flow, boom, baby. That's what I'm talking about. Ah! Mark myself. You guys having fun with these videos? Is this what you wanted to see? I know some people were like, hey bro, give it to me. I was like, are you sure about that, buddy? So yeah, the 24 gauge wires are going to be a little harder for you to solder to. They kind of, because they're thicker, so they kind of take a little bit more effort, but you can get them if you just try a little harder. Alright, here we go. Almost done. Let's finish this guy up. Let's get this bread. Probably help, if I had better helping hands, this would probably be a lot easier. Something I need to update. That's okay. Got this. Boom, baby. Now one more wire. One more wire. This one's a little long. Let's go ahead and finish this guy up right quick. And that's looking good. Boom. That's good stuff. That's the good stuff there. Alright. Okay, so now I've got all my wires. They all look pretty. They all look pretty. That's really good. I like that. I like the way that looks. That looks good stuff. They all pretty even all the way across. There's no bridging. Everything looks good. We are set to the final step, which is going to be inserting this guy into its home, bending the wires, heat shrink, and getting it prepped for installing into the hilt. Everything else is pretty good. I'm very happy with that. Looks great. Next thing I like to do is some heat shrink for the wires that are behind the PCB, all the ones that we just wired up. So you don't need a lot, just a little bit. Take a little bit here. I'm going to take my heat shrink. Heat shrink is incredible. You guys really definitely need heat shrink if you're going to be doing any type of installation of lightsabers, because you're going to have to splice wires every now and then. But what I'm doing basically is I'm getting that Go all the way down to the bottom of the base of your PCB and your pins and everything. So you can use the end piece of your soldering iron, because you just gotta get some heat. A lot of people will use a heat gun. That works too. I personally just go straight for a lighter. I use a lighter. Now you don't want to hold it underneath and burn anything, so I just get it underneath and I kind of back and forth, turn it, keep everything in motion so I'm not burning anything, and heat rises, so it will be more than enough to get to that heat shrink. Okay, now heat shrink is heat shrunk and now there is a lot less stress to the wires at our connection points, so that's really good. That's what we want. We don't want a lot of motion. So now what we're going to do even more is I'm going to take my wires and I'm going to twist them, give them a nice little braid. Remember, you don't want to do it from at the connections. Pinch above what you just did the heat shrink on and kind of twist with your other hand and work your way down to get a nice braid going. And then from there, if you want to hit it with the old razzle dazzle, you can add heat to the wires. These are just like a silicone type of wire. Well, they're not silicone, but these kinds of wires, if you heat them just a little bit, they get warm, and twist and hold them for a second, it'll keep them more tighter on the hold when they kind of dry up a little bit. Now we're going to go back to our Neopixel connector, the holder, the Neopixel blade side holder, and I'm going to insert the pins right through the hole there. Now sometimes you may have to clean it out like an X-Acto knife. Sometimes the 3D printing will leave some residue in it, or the drilling, because it's like a Delrin style holder. So you may have to like get a tip and kind of scrape them out. That way you can get this to go in there easily enough, so you're not so you're not forcing anything. You definitely don't want to force these pins. You kind of got to find that sweet spot and then push them through. Don't want to push down on the pogo pins really hard and end up breaking one or twisting one in the process. So just be very careful and mind how you're doing it. Now we're going to take these screws that are retentions for the PCB, and we're going to go ahead and slowly get it in just enough to where we were able to thread it in, right? Drop it in there enough to where it was threaded just once or twice to make sure that it's in and it's not going anywhere. Now what you want to do is you want to alternate when you tighten them. Tighten one side a little, tighten the other side a little. So that way you're not tightening one side all the way down and then it's lopsided and then you strip something or chip a PCB. That would be no good. So what I do is I usually tighten it down a little bit, swap over, tighten down this side a little bit, tighten this guy down a little bit. I already felt it kind of touch. Tighten this guy down, and you don't want to over tighten these. Just tighten it to where it feels like it's in, it's not going anywhere, and you're good to go. And there we go. That is it. And then you can cut these even better to length if you really want to. See how some of them ended up being a little shorter. It's probably my bad. So there we go. That is your Neopixel connectors. Very simple. And you just take it, take that guy out, and we're going to take this, feed it through, slide that guy down. I'm kind of OCD and I like to try to get the PCBs to line up a specific way, the pins to line up with it, kind of look nice. And then your retention screw right here is going to hold the PCB everywhere. And then from there, you just move on to wire management through the chassis. So that will slide up in there, and those wires will pop through. But that's it, guys. That's basically how I do my Neopixel connectors. I think it's very simple with the Custom Saber Shop. The Smuggler's Outpost ones are really good as well. You also have the stock, Dimitri Stock's lit PCBs. You can do those as well. Those will have the PCBs lit on the they'll have the LEDs lights on the PCB. You're gonna have to solder two 603 resistors. There's a lot more soldering. It's a little bit more complex. I just like to use this one because I make a Neopixel blade plug to go with the blade, to go with it anyways, just because I like to do that. I like to make these. It's fun for me, and it takes only a few minutes. So I like to do that. I like to keep the inside simple if I can. That way if something goes wrong, I won't have to get wild on taking this thing apart. Usually once this is all tested and good to go, then if there's a problem, it might be with my config or something like along those lines. I hope that was helpful for you guys. That's just another way that I do it. Like I said, there are plenty of ways to do it, but this has been one that I tend to like to do. It's just very straightforward and a lot of, like I said, simplistic, not over complicated, and I believe anyone can do it. So that'll do it for this, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. I may do a switch video next. Again, this is just things that I do that you guys have asked me to show you the installation sides of lightsabers. Thanks again, guys, so much. Go out there and check out Smuggler's Outpost on Etsy. And you can also find all these components on the customsabershop.com. If you are in the UK, there's the saberarmory.com. There are plenty of stores out there. There's Etsy shops. There's tons of places to get components. If you can't find them, check out those places. Thank you guys so much, and I'll catch you in the next video.
Who's scruffy looking?